Hi guys, Cam here from today's iPhone.com, and this is the second part of my comparison between the HTC One and the iPhone 5. Which one's going to come out tops? I'll say my opinion, but you can decide and you can let me know in the comments after the video's finished. So let's go on to sound quality, call quality and battery performance. Now, obviously I've mentioned the sound on this is fantastic. The HTC One stereo speakers, both with their own individual amps, coupled with Beats audio that's built into here, is incredible. It's like sound you've never experienced before on a smartphone. And when you hear the depth of quality that's on this, when you've got it right in front of you playing a game or watching a video, you're going to wonder how you managed with something else. It's just incredible. The iPhone's only got one speaker, which for its part does a good job. But then when you compare it to the HTC One, obviously it just pales into insignificance. Now, call quality is great on both. They've both got noise cancelling microphones for helping you to hear what's going on the other side, as well as for your caller to make sure they hear you and not all the noise going on around you. So that's been good. I've not noticed any drop calls on either. Signal strength has been equal on both. I've used the same SIM card in both phones just to test what signal strength is like, and it's been great. Speed and performance wise, the HTC One has got a quad-core 1.5 GHz processor with 2 gigs of RAM. Now that's obviously going to be quick, and even with all the apps loading in the background, I haven't noticed any lag at all. The iPhone obviously has a 1 GHz processor, dual core, and it does its job fantastically because the iOS operating system isn't built to multitask. It doesn't run things in the background. It's very efficient, and so it doesn't need the same kind of power to make sure that it can work. Now, I've not noticed any lag on either phone, so in the performance kind of area they're both very similar in terms of day-to-day use. Obviously the HTC One's got way more power, but then it kind of needs it for the software that it's running. Now let's move on to battery life. Now what I've found, I've been using the HTC One as my daily driver now for about 2 weeks, and I've had it for a while. Now what I was incredibly surprised by is that even though it's got a 1080p display, better sound, it's got all these sorts of features, quad-core processor, I still get 2 days out of every charge, which is fantastic for a smartphone, especially a flagship smartphone, because a lot of them you find these days have all the best features, incredible specs and incredibly powerful, and yet they only last a day. But this one is, the HTC One has really surprised me in that front because it's got some really smart battery saving features in there. It will switch certain things like 3G and Wi-Fi off if you've had your screen off for a certain length of time. It will also switch down your screen brightness automatically once you hit about 10-15% battery left, so it conserves as much as it can so that you can get through a day. It's worth noting that I'm a fairly moderate user. I'm not a heavy user of a smartphone. I spend most of my time behind my computer, so I don't use it all the time, all the day. But to get 2 days out of it compared to an iPhone, which I'd probably get maybe a day and a half, 2 days at a stretch, kind of shows me that the battery in this, the 2330 milliamp hour battery in the HTC One, has been fine-tuned to perform really well in the device. So on the hardware front as a whole, it's quite clear I'm very impressed with the HTC One. Although I prefer the smaller form factor of the iPhone, it feels smaller and lighter and thinner, it looks nicer. In terms of performance and display and for media consumption, the HTC One is a great phone. Now, one thing that's, obviously this is my own personal opinion, one thing I have found is that when you start comparing software and ecosystem, obviously Android and iOS do things differently, and you may like widgets, you may not like widgets, and that's not a concern to me. What is a concern to me is obviously App Store and ecosystem. Now with things like iCloud, iTunes, Apple ID, all interlinked, everything together, my emails, my iMessage is all linked to one account, and that makes for a very convenient experience, especially when you consider how many apps the App Store has got. Now although they've got a similar number of apps, I think it's about 800,000 in each of the respective app stores, you do find that a lot more effort and attention to detail goes into design on the apps for iOS, and that's mostly because A, people use them more, B, people pay more money for them, and C, obviously developers make more money, and it's, I guess D, if there's a fourth reason, it's easier to develop for iOS because you've only got 2 or 3 different screen sizes to optimize it for. And if you're only going to make one for iPhone, which is often the case with certain apps for weather and task management, you find that actually they've only got 2 different screen sizes, whereas when you compare it to Android, they've obviously got to test it on hundreds and hundreds of devices if they want to make sure that it gives a consistent experience. But that's changing. Apps have gotten better. I'm not saying there's no good apps on Android. There are fantastic apps on Android, and it's probably second to iOS when you compare it to the likes of BlackBerry the BlackBerry App World and the Windows App Store as well. So all in all, for me personally, obviously I'm still going to stick with my iPhone. I couldn't do without the apps, and I love the design of the iPhone. But if you want a phone that's going to give you a fantastic experience when it comes to media and gaming and just sheer power and performance, you're going to find it hard to find anything better than the HTC One. In fact, with the Galaxy S4 coming out very soon, I would still say that Galaxy S4's gimmicky extra features that are on there are no match for what HTC has done with the HTC One. I'd quite happily say, right now, this is probably the best piece of hardware on the market. It really is, and it's a great phone. I wish it was running iOS. That's my only problem with it. There we go. If you want to ask me any questions about this, if you think I've been unfair, if you think I'm biased, if you think the HTC One beats the iPhone in absolutely every category, then please feel free to shout at me and let me know in the comments as usual, or on Twitter. I'm at @TIP_Cam. But that has been the comparison. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you like our videos, hit subscribe button, which is either there, or there. I can't remember. But anyway, I will see you again soon.